Hello class and welcome to the experiment. Today we're going to take a look at Japan's biggest star, Godzilla. If you haven't heard of Godzilla, then congratulations on moving out from under that rock. Welcome to the real world. Seriously though, Godzilla is one of the longest running film series in history, with at least 30 movies to his name. 30 movies! That's as many as James Bond and Harry Potter combined. But today we're not here to talk about those. We're here to talk about the film that started it all, Godzilla. In fact, our subject today isn't really the Big G himself. Don't worry. Our subject today is another incredibly awesome character from the 1954 film, Dr. Daisuke Serizawa. He's a chemist. Oh, come on, don't be like that. He's easily the most metal chemist in all of film history. Just look at that eye patch. He's like Nick Fury meets Dr. Frankenstein. It's great. The reason we're talking about him today is because he's made a horrific discovery. After losing his eye during World War II, Serizawa dedicated his life to science, specifically studying the element oxygen. He wanted to find some way to make the world a better place. And hey, what better place to start than the thing we all constantly need to stay alive? Am I right? Instead, Serizawa discovered something terrifying. Something that could change the world as we know it. Yeah, okay, so maybe a few fish dissolving isn't as scary in today's world of over-the-top gore and CGI demons, but still, you have to admit the idea of a chemical weapon that can dissolve any living thing in water is pretty frightening. Imagine the chaos it could cause. Move over, Jaws, we've got a new reason not to go in the water. Thankfully, Dr. Serizawa's invention could never work in real life. Or could it? And if so, how would it work?
I believe that's my cue. Hello, I'm Dr. Lloyd.
Wait, I didn't know you were a doctor.
You never asked. As I was saying, my research has shown that deoxygenation is very real. Bodies of water with little to no oxygen dissolved in them are known as dead zones and are very dangerous to local marine life.
So is that what Dr. Serizawa discovered? How these dead zones are created?
Not exactly. You see, dead zones aren't the kinds of things that pop up overnight. Most dead zones are caused by long-term pollution via nitrogen-rich fertilizers. These chemicals encourage plankton overpopulation, meaning lots of dead bodies. These bodies are then decomposed by microbes in a process that absorbs oxygen. With so many dead plankton to break down, the oxygen in the water gets used up faster than it can be replenished, and in a few years you end up with a dead zone. According to the geniuses at the New York Times, quote, about 400 coastal dead zones have been identified, and their combined area is comparable to the U.S. state of Oregon. Many are doubling in size every year. The organisms living in these areas do not have the skill set to adapt to such a quick change in their environment. It would take a few generations to acquire these skills. Which means, Jesse, if we were poor little organisms living in these dead zones, we would eventually have to migrate or die. But there is a catch. You see, while the oxygen destroyer does mimic these similarities of a dead zone environment, the technicalities of the oxygen destroyer are actually much more chemical.
Well, I guess you could call that theory a dead end.
Oh, God.
Anyway, did you find any other leads?
A few. The most promising was a 2014 article published by the Royal Society of Chemistry about a new compound they had synthesized, which seems to be some sort of oxygen superabsorber. Something about cobalt ions bonding to O2 molecules like the iron in your blood. It was pretty advanced stuff that went way over my head.
You said you were a doctor!
Yeah, of philosophy.
Ow.
Hang on, I believe Milan has a graphic for this. Cue the graphic, Milan. Alright, according to the article, quote, the material they have made has 4 cobalt ions in purple, held in place by nitrogen atoms, blue, and oxygen atoms, red, which themselves are enclosed within a framework of carbon atoms, gray. The cobalt ions attract oxygen to this structure in the same way that iron does in hemoglobin. At room temperature, it can suck out oxygen from air. They can vary the structure in the compound after how long the process takes. And get this, ladies and gentlemen, these scientists have found that if you heat this compound up, you can actually get the oxygen back. Man, they must have too much time in their hands.
So, what you're saying here is the oxygen destroyer is real?
Well, technically not yet, but science is getting closer and closer to making this a possibility. Anyway, the article claims that this crystalline salt could suck 99% of oxygen out of a room and compress it to up to 160 times the density it's found in air. They're looking into using it in hospitals, purifying oxygen for patients who have respiratory problems, and as a safer oxygen containment and transportation alternative to pressurized tanks.
Anyway, all this talk of replacing oxygen tanks is good news for hospitals and man-eating sharks, but our main concern is how well it suffocates fish.
That's when we start having problems. You see, while this is a new compound, readily absorbs oxygen in the air, it doesn't work so well in water. It also requires up to 20 minutes of work, much slower than what's shown in the film.
Well, it also doesn't really match up with what Serizawa says in the film. He describes the oxygen destroyer as, quote, a new form of energy that splits oxygen into a fluid.
Huh. I definitely didn't find any of that during my research.
Well, this has been disappointing. Here I thought we could discover a new super weapon to unleash on mankind.
Yes, not creating a mass murder device is so disappointing.
Well, when you put it like that, I suppose it's for the best. In fact, Dr. Serizawa was so worried about his invention being used for war that he kept it completely hidden from everyone he knew and loved. Even at the end of the film, once he's been convinced that he absolutely has to use his creation to stop the even worse threat of Godzilla, he is so dedicated to keeping it out of anyone's hands that he destroys all of his years of research. And finally, to ensure every record of his work is erased, he exposes himself to his invention alongside Godzilla.
Whoa, that's dark. Also, spoiler alert?
Oh, please. The movie is 60 years old. No one cares anymore. But still, if you and class get the chance, do watch it. The special effects haven't aged too well, but the commentary on nuclear weapons and the scientists and governments behind them is just as relevant now as it was then. Anyway, thanks for your help, Jamie, even if it didn't go anywhere or amount to anything.
You're welcome, I think.
And a big thank you to you, Milan, for your wonderful editing talents. But mostly I want to thank you, class, for watching. See you all next time.
So, am I, allowed to leave?
No, you stay locked in the research room until all the projects are done. That goes for you too, Milan. Don't think I haven't noticed you trying to pick the locks on your chains. Now, push the button and end this.
I should have gone to medical school.